forest. Dandelion here. Hope everybody's well. Just exploring the fall season, looking around for mushrooms. Just found some oyster mushrooms, so got a little handful snack. This will go into my dinner tonight. Smells so good. It's really an amazing mushroom. I haven't found too many, but what I have been finding and harvested a bunch of is one of my favorite medicinal mushrooms, turkey tails, otherwise known as Trametes versicolor. One of the ways that you can discern it from some of the other polypore mushrooms, polypore means many pores, is if I break open a piece, these are actually a little old. Let's see if I can find one that's super fresh. Hey Diana, welcome. So you can see here, it's actually not the best example, but they are whitish under the inside, and so turkey tails, opposed to its lookalikes, such as Sterium ostrea, for example, have a white underside with pores. So you can see the top and bottom there. And if you're interested to learn more, I do have an article on my website about turkey tails. That's returntonature.us. But these are one of my favorite medicinal mushrooms, and of course everyone from Paul Stamets, who has a book called Mycomedicinals, to all kinds of research with Harvard and I believe Johns Hopkins, who are actually doing clinical studies on one component in this mushroom called polysaccharide K. And polysaccharides are basically complex sugar molecules which are said to basically help the body against cancer. Usually, of course, a saccharide is not the best for us. Glucose, fructose, sucrose, in moderation are good. Coming from vegetables or fruit or other natural substances like honey or maple syrup are very different than jacked up high fructose corn syrup, etc., synthetic sugars, bleached sugars, things like that. Creatures. So they actually are doing studies on this mushroom, but it's very weird because they're going to basically turn it into a name that you will not recognize. You'll never know that it's just this mushroom, beautiful mushroom out of your backyard. So you can look into that. I do have a bunch of links on my article, as I mentioned, so check that out. It's profound to me that actually in Paul Stamets' book, Mycomedicinals, he talks about the studies that were done on breast tumor reduction, the size of breast tumor reduction. They did clinical studies on that, so you can check that out. So obviously we know the medicinal mushrooms as a whole are very profound against cancers, and that's kind of their magical secret. So look around for mushrooms like turkey tails. One of the things I do is I'll dry them out, and then I like to add them in to herbal teas or caffeinated teas. So you can make what's called a decoction. So you boil these, you rip them up as finely as you can. After drying them, you add several cups of water, maybe 2 teaspoons to 2 cups of water, and you boil it for about 10 to 15 minutes, and then you have what's called a decoction. From there you can actually pour that decoction with the mushrooms infused into it and pour that over whatever it is, green tea or nettle, stinging nettle, or coffee, and then you infuse that, and then you kind of make a decoction and then an infusion, and you let that steep for a while, and then that gives you a mushroom infused beverage. So Diana asks, will I ever be coming to Southwest Montana? Hopefully one day. I'm about to do a tour to the West Coast starting basically this weekend at Ananda Ashram in Monroe, New York. I'll be teaching a foraging and herbalism retreat there, so everybody's welcome to come if you're in the area. And then from there, the next weekend I'll be in Ohio teaching, starts with an R, Ohio, southwestern Ohio, and then I'm headed to Indiana, Kentucky, New Mexico. What's next? Arizona, and then I'll be in Nevada, and then doing a winter tour up the California coast, so check all that out. I added that article to my website today, returntonature.us, so you can check that out. Hope to meet a lot of you out there. So check that out. Please help spread the word in any way. Richard asks, do I know any medicinal qualities of trooping funnel toadstools? Of course, the common name toadstool doesn't do anything for us. It just muddies the water as far as what we're talking about. So I've never heard of a trooping funnel mushroom of any sort. So either Latin name or I don't understand the common name that you're using. So I cannot tell you. Welcome everybody. We just explored wonderful turkey tails. The other thing that I like to do is I'll harvest as I go. So obviously there's a whole bunch here, and I'm just going to show you all what I call ethical harvesting. So I'll break different bits from different pieces, from different areas, I mean. There's some. There we go. So I'm trying to keep it so that the spores can drop out of these from every which angle possible. And there you go. So that's a pretty big harvest. I harvested probably 10% of what I found, maybe even less. And that's plenty to make several cups of tea. I can make, 8 cups at least out of that. And what I've been doing is harvesting these, and of course in my apothecary I already have about 1.5 gallons of Trimides versicolor tincture. If anyone's interested, give us an email. And also what I plan to do is I brought a big chunk of chaga along for the tour, the Foragers Mobile tour, and I'll be making, and I envision doing tea ceremonies with medicinal herbs and mushrooms where we sit together and we do some inner work on how does it feel, what is it doing for you, and journaling. And one of the things I'm going to add to that is make a chaga and turkey tail decoction. So that's coming up soon in California. Really excited. So I'm going to walk and look for more mushrooms as I was doing, and hopefully I'll find something swell. Sometimes right when I turn the camera on, I find the best things after walking and walking. Oh, Ischnoderma, I guess resinum. I call it the resinous polypore, as Chris mentions. That one is apparently edible, but I've never desired to eat it. So I saw a bunch of those today. So apparently people are trying to eat that one. It just has never appealed to me. It's a little leathery for my taste. But if you try it, Chris, let me know how it goes for you. Here's another Trimides. That's Trimides elegans. And another difficult thing is, just because we don't have a lot of clinical research on these polypore mushrooms doesn't mean they don't have a large chance of being medicinal. So there's a lot out there we still don't know, especially because it turns out the industry of healing is completely bought out. Oh my goodness. So we don't always have the ability, the finances, the capacity to well research new mushrooms and plants that we discover to find their activity and their non-toxicity. That costs, in a laboratory, that costs probably $100,000. So it's pretty challenging to do that, other than realize that we've damaged the lineage which would know this. The people that were here, we didn't document, and we did kill them. So there's a lot of education to be regained through very systematic experimentation in a very educated way, first starting with the intellect and moving into the intuitive faculties. That's what I do with many plants. Datura is one that I've worked with for probably 20 years, just trying to uncover the medicinal aspects, the medicinal virtues out of that plant from the propaganda that has been given into us about the fear of that plant. So there's lots of cases of stuff like that. That's why herbalism is so necessary in this time. That's why you all are necessary in this time, to kind of push the envelope, to not buy the propaganda anymore, and to experiment on yourself in a way that is very systematic and safe. That does not mean go out in the woods and eat the first thing you find. It means first you do all the research, you try to study it, you try to interview people who have that information, and then going from there to verify the non-toxicity, starting in a very low dose practice and working your way up over years. That's how it's been with me for Datura, for example. Claudia mentions, don't forget to put our 2018 Mushroom Fest in Cave Spring, Georgia on your calendar. Oh, awesome, Claudia. Thanks for reminding me, and we'll see if I'm anywhere near there in, I think it's September. Who knows? Too far for me to think. Frank mentions turkey tail tincture with alcohol. How long should it sit in alcohol? When you're making a tincture, generally the answer is about 1 moon cycle, at least. So you could always go further than that. So approximately 28 days. From an alchemical perspective, you're then giving actually the ability for all of the moon phases to infuse each medicine you make. And so that's very important, because the moon in astrology represents the internal state of the mind. And so that helps us integrate the medicine in a deeper way. But generally, we just say a month. And if you're interested to learn more about tincture making, I have a whole video from Northeast Organic Farmers Association, where I taught there last winter, and I did a class called Tincturing 101. So there has a basic breakdown of a lot of tincture making. And that's on youtube.com/return-to-nature-skills. And of course, appropriately is a double or triple extraction, which is kind of an advanced technique. If you make a single extraction, which means a tincture, alcohol tincture only, of medicinal mushrooms, it will still be effective. It just will not capture the wider spectrum. There's always a wider spectrum of constituents to capture, and that's more advanced techniques. So don't let that stop you, but know that there's more to explore out there. So a basic tincture of any medicinal mushrooms is going to be very helpful. Even a decoction will be. A double extract is when you take a decoction and a tincture and you combine them. So Claudia, sounds great. Hope we will sit in a circle and drink lots of medicinal teas today. This next year. Christian says, analytical lab coming soon at Mushroom Mountain will help. Awesome. We need stuff like that. We sure need the revolution in chemistry. And this is kind of, the way I see it is alchemy is the substratum of physical chemistry. And once a culture realizes that there is a spiritual component to the holism of the organism and its relationship to the ecosystem. So what I mean by that is, as I mentioned before, Johns Hopkins is doing clinical research on one chemical constituent of turkey tail, right? There are probably 20,000, 50,000, 300,000 chemical constituents in turkey tail. We in the West have a remove your gallbladder, remove your appendix, nature makes excess, and we are entitled to chop it into pieces to determine what is the best. And that is a hierarchical structure of perception that really started with social Darwinism or neo-Darwinism, where we think that the brain is the leader of the body. This is being proven every single day to be not true. Or like the president is the leader of the country. This is proving also to not be true. Or whatever you consider as the active ingredients in a plant are the most important, and everything else is garbage. So that's the concept basically of junk DNA, which is absolutely insane. I always like to ask at my classes, does that mean you've seen a lot of brains walking around by themselves? I mean, your toes are just as important as your brain, you know, because if your brain's just sitting there in a jar, that's not going to be very functional or important. So the holism of the organism is actually the part that your body, which is also built out of that, relates to. So you have this relationship of plant to body or mushroom to body. And so every single constituent in the turkey tail mushroom is necessary because it's been sitting around evolving for hundreds of millions of years. So obviously, if it had junk, it would be dead, because it would have slowed its evolution down, and in all that time it would have been deleted from the ecosystem. That's what's been happening. Welcome, new human. So we have the now reclamation of the reclamation of all of the chemical constituents that we're finding in plants, and how do we make a more perfect medicine which encompasses more of that chemical constituents. So this is where the alchemical revolution comes in, because that is about understanding the spectrum of medicine, within each substance, and then trying to actually encapsulate that into your medicine. So a basic tincture is a small but significant spectrum of the chemical constituents. An essential oil is a even smaller but significant aspect of the chemical constituents of plant. The resins, the terpenes, the vitamins, and the minerals, all of those are essential components of what's in a plant or an organism. And those are, of course, built out of the intelligence of the biological system itself. Every single piece of that, minus alkaloids and vitamins, were already in the ecosystem, essentially. It's absorbing its surrounding ecosystem, and it's building its body out of it, and then it's a chemical laboratory, which is starting to take all of the chemistry that it can sequester from the environment and make novel compounds. And those are generally alkaloids, which were uniquely built by plants. That is a significant upgrade from the mineral world to the plant world. They took minerals, sunlight, water, all the rest of the elements, air, oxygen, and they built alkaloids out of that. And nothing else, no rocks ever built alkaloids. So that's a very significant part. But the plant is also part rock, because all the minerals in the plant are micro units of the broken down rock which are laying next to the plant. And there's a symbiotic relationship between the plant, the mushrooms, the bacteria, the yeasts, the fungus, everything, and it's actually breaking down those rocks, which are combinations of minerals, and it's absorbing that into its body. So when you're making a tincture, you're actually discarding what's called the mineral body in alchemy. So that's one thing. If you've ever heard of a spagyric or a salt of X, Y, or Z, a salt of stinging nettle, that is when you actually calcinate and purify the body instead of discard it, like is done in traditional tincture making. So that process is so far away from what we now think of as chemistry. So this is kind of kitchen witchery or alchemy. And this is about to have a profound renaissance in our culture once we realize, oh, this is stuff you can do at home. And this happens every couple thousand of years. And underlying alchemy is the sense that the trajectory of the human endeavor is significant and worth something, in that every time we come into this dimension, there is what we call the great work, or the magnum opus. And this is sort of a perfecting of the soul in nature and the soul in humans. And so when we really come to the core of what that means in this day and age, without maybe the indoctrination of the Judeo-Christian language that they had, or the sexism that they may have inherently had in their language, what we come to is the sense of we are souls here incarnated to increase the alchemical process, which is humans in nature, right? What we do with nature, we take nature and we turn nature into things. And so Paracelsus talked about this quite frequently. And at that time, what man was doing, so back to this language that they would be using, man was making gold alchemically. And this was seen as how man got possessed by the greed of the material world. And Paracelsus came along and challenged all of them, instead of making gold, to make medicine, to take the alchemical process and to make medicine instead of gold, things for greed and exploitation. Now, there is gold medicines, all kinds of medicine can be made from gold, but Paracelsus reinvented the plant tradition in his time. So we have all this historical context to understand when we're talking about chemical constituents and what's in a plant or a mushroom, and learning and educating ourselves as to what how we can discover if a certain plant or mushroom, as I was mentioning the Trametes, is medicinal or not. All of that is a very important part of the evolutionary trajectory that we are still a part of to this day. And that's a very important thing. Justin says, is reishi the best medicinal shroom? This is, again, I think that's the thinking that I'm pointing out right now. There is no best. That's if reishi is what you take, then that's the best. But if turkey tails is what sits on the shelf and you never consume it, then that's not the best, right? So when you are taking an organism from its environment, you are taking the wholeness, you're not taking the piece, and you ingest the chemical constituents, but also the spirit of the forest, and that's what heals you. So reishi is the best medicinal mushroom if the reishi itself tells you to take it. And it will tell you to take it by, you'll find reishi in the woods, and you'll be like, wow, I was just thinking about you. And it will say, I know that. And then it will say, hey, only pick one. And your mind may be like, yeah, but I want all of them because I can sell it. And it will be like, no, shut up. That's your mind. I get it. But take this much. And if you listen to that, then you'll walk 20 feet and find 50 more. And that's how it goes. And that's nature communicating with the monkeys, otherwise now known as humans. Let's see, let's try to catch up here. Christian says, in my experience, approaching science with an alchemical mindset brings such fast and abundant success in the lab and real life application. That's the goal. That is the goal. As above, so below. That means any scientific experiment you're doing is a metaphor for your internal spiritual process and a metaphor for the cosmological process. So when you look at a petri dish and you see organisms building, that is a culture. That is a group of beings which have an intention and a trajectory and a saga. And that is the same as the human saga. And there are things built and things destroyed and people die and there are armies and there are wars and there are red blood cells and white blood cells and contamination and disease and pandemics. And if you understand that your science experiment is a metaphor for your internal process and the cosmological process, you can see beyond your individual experiment. That's like if you understand that what you're picking out of the reishi is the reishi and the spirit of nature through the reishi, then you're going to consume that much energy instead of consume polysaccharide K. And that's what's going to heal us. You know, I believe the greatest disease is our disconnection from nature. And if we were consuming a natural diet, we would be medicinalizing ourselves naturally, right? Taking nettle and eating it is healing yourself, right? That's when food is medicine and medicine is food. Frank says, can you let tinctures sit for too long? And 99% of the time the answer is no. However, if you have something that's toxic at high doses, then that may be a concern. But generally people aren't really messing with those kind of plants or mushrooms. So generally the answer is no, unless you're dealing with something that could have a toxicity. And then the answer could be yes, generally no. Don't you like my both answers? As above, so below, says Christian. What's up, Jesse? I'm really excited. Jesse and I will be co-teaching a workshop at his wonderful homestead in New Mexico, Chimayo, I believe, Chimayo, New Mexico. So that's sometime mid-November. As I mentioned again, check out the full schedule at returntonature.us. I just put an article up, or I've been posting it all over my Facebook profile pictures. So check that out, and hope to see you out there. And tonight, actually, blessings, Jesse. Tonight I'll be finishing up the solar panels with Antononco Earth Arts School, and I'm really excited about that. Got the batteries in, gonna hook up the light, and that's gonna enable me finally to have a laptop, internet access, and a light. So that's gonna enable me to do a lot more webinars, a lot more online stuff. So really excited. Diana says, will I be posting these seminars with Jesse? I will, when we can, put up a webcam in certain times. The question is, does that warrant some donation for the teachers or not? Is that something free? And then if it's something free, what's the incentive for people to actually come? So if you have any insights or feedback or thoughts about that process, let me know. I would be webcasting a lot more of my classes, but basically we get into it and I don't have anybody to hold a camera. So if you ever come to classes and you want to have a discount on the cost of the class, just let me know that you'd like to sit there and hold a camera, and we could do some more live webcasting. Yeah, Diana, I agree. So when when I've tried in the past to do classes, I'll do an in-person class and an online version, and then it becomes a little disorienting and complicated. So I'll definitely be doing that more and more. Really appreciate you all. Keep on doing your good medicine works, and enjoy the alchemical trajectory. And I just want to say, if you're interested more about that, go check out the School of Evolutionary Herbalism and Sage Apopum. It's also rocking lots of good alchemical insights. So that is very important. And once you get those principles down, which, by the way, I will be talking a lot about this weekend at the Foraging and Herbalism Retreat, otherwise known as the Yoga of Plants. And then I'll also be talking about that in Kentucky, as I mentioned, in mid-November, Louisville, Kentucky at the Inner Warrior. I'll definitely be talking a lot about, it's called Yoga, Tantra, and the Alchemical Tradition. So hopefully we can get some online audience going for that too. Frank, definitely, you could definitely help do some filming, and we can figure out either doing that by donation to the live viewers. Let me know if you'd be interested in viewing classes for donation and what you think the appropriate donation is. Please, I'm all about your feedback, so you let me know, send me a private message or anything. Yeah, Sage Apopum is definitely a good teacher in our world, so we're definitely coming back for the revolution. And don't give up just yet, just do more. Always try to think about, is there one thing I did today that helped? And if you're doing one thing that you did today that helped, luckily the other side is doing a lot of things that don't help, so their negativity is being seen. So every day the dark side is too egotistical to hide itself, so it comes more and more out of the shadows, and then we can see it. And every day the little forest dwellers find more weapons of knowledge to spread with the world. So keep on doing your sacred work. Sending you all lots of love and blessings. See you soon, friends. And please share this. Peace.